NFL Draft 2023 recap. That is the initiative on this episode of W2F. Thank you for joining us. If you've made it this far, Brian Stewart joined by Matt as usual. And we introduced last week a brand new segment. I don't want to assume that all of our listeners necessarily caught that brand new segment. So I'm going to open again explaining what we're going to be discussing here. The W2F segment, worst to first, very simple. Matt and I, one at a time, we will rank a given subject, topic, whatever for that week, starting with the worst of that subject area and then going up to third place, second place, okay, and then ultimately at the top, whatever we view to be the best of the best of that given subject. And so this week, Matt, we just have NFL draft picks. 2023 draft picks could be any player, any round. Doesn't matter. So it's very broad. But I'm going to let you start and tell me who was the worst pick made by a team this past week. You were in attendance at the draft. I assume you have plenty of good intel and info. So just lay it on me.
Yeah, Brian, we had our ears on the ground out there in Kansas City. And, not to jump the gun early on DOTY this week, or DOTW. I'm still disappointed that you didn't make it out, man. The draft was in your backyard, and you weren't there. I think the crowd missed you. Jamal Charles certainly missed you. Almost had an opportunity to run into him. Okay. I don't know, man. I think you just disappointed. I think the listeners wanted you there on boots on the ground, interviewing the NFL hardcore. I'm talking the hardcore of hardcore fans were there, Brian. You know the guy, the Panther guy with like the makeup mask thing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. I still couldn't tell what it was. It was amazing, though, in person. I was like, fantastic. I saw the Jets airman. Wow.
He was there?
Oh, yeah, man. The whole crew was.
Fireman Ed?
Well, shoot, I don't know if it's Fireman Ed or not, but I mean, it was definitely the Jets boys. So he's probably with those guys.
They kept showing, so every time a team, especially the first couple nights when the picks would take longer, they would show that same segment of fans. So, this Panther guy you're describing, Catboy, you would see him every time the Panthers were on the clock and he's just yelling. The Eagles, they had a dude who was out of control. And it's like, okay, once was good, but we're kind of wearing it out a little bit, ESPN. That's a whole other deep topic we can get into, the coverage of the draft, which I largely was pretty good this year. And I know that because I watched from home. But continue on.
Yeah, man, it was just it was a wild experience seeing all the diehards. And honestly, I mean, I know that people come from all over the country to come to this, but it just kind of blows your mind when you see it all in person. Just so many wild cards. A lot of Eagles fans, like a lot. So, I mean, I don't know if that just speaks to their fan base at large or, post Super Bowl, they're like just turned up and they're ready to go or what. Maybe there's just a lot in the Missouri area. I don't know. But it's kind of fascinating to kind of keep track how many people were from which team. A lot of Panthers fans, of course. Very intriguing.
I would say it's just a color. It's a color thing, right? Like your brain notices more of one color than another, and maybe you just felt like there was a ton of Carolina blue out there, and it could have been just an adequate amount. I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm throwing out ideas here. I know one thing: it was evidently Chiefs heavy. I mean, on the TV, It looked like it was 75%. I don't know if it was to that degree, but it's how it appeared.
Oh yeah, it was nuts, man. It was, and I think in a lot of ways, I think probably that being on TV after the Super Bowl, if people didn't already hate the Chiefs, they're well on the way now. I'll tell you that. But yeah, sorry to derail things for a minute there. Let's get back to the worst to first conversation. Brian, I have a couple of options for my worst, but I'm going to go with just my first one. I'm going to take the Detroit Lions with Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian. I did not love this pick at all. I think this team is on the up and up. I know they traded away DeAndre Swift, but is that really the thing we need to be addressing right now with the 12th pick? I don't get it. I don't know if you do. I don't see it.
They had me all over the map this weekend, and I've been rooting for Detroit. Like I wanted to come away feeling like they hit it out of the park. And I would say by the time round two ended and they made those draft picks, the safety from Alabama, Brian Branch, they had in the second round also the tight end from Iowa, who is pretty well viewed. It was like I've heard other people say, if you mix the where they were picked, you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of make more sense out of it, maybe. And then on the flip side, I started to think more too in the NFC, where the best teams are so good at running the ball, so tough defensive, offensive lines, Philly, Dallas, San Fran. It kind of makes sense to invest in matching that because Jared Goff. I mean, Jared Goff, the year he goes to the Super Bowl, would they have done that without Todd Gurley when Gurley was right there at the end of his prime? No, they
Hmm.
probably wouldn't have. And so maybe you can make the argument that way, even if it was a little rich of a pick. My problem though, ultimately, was sending I guess, I mean, obviously they don't like DeAndre Swift. They must feel like he'll make the Eagles worse. I don't know. But from my view, they made the Eagles better by giving them DeAndre Swift. And so you may have just made your hill steeper to climb for a team that has Super Bowl worthy talent in the NFC side. Like, I think they could get there if things break a certain way.
No, great point. Yeah, I wasn't even factoring in the fact that they strengthened the best team in the NFC. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense on paper now that you say it.
Hmm. Now, and speaking of strengthening other teams, my worst pick, I don't want this to be about the player so much. It's not really that,
Mm-hmm.
but more so the whole picture of the trade. The Houston Texans going from 12 to 3 to draft Will Anderson, defensive end, after they took Stroud did not make sense to me on multiple levels. And to be honest, it could have been a different team that they traded with, and I might have been able to stomach it.
Mm-hmm.
But giving that first round pickup next year in what is clearly viewed as a better draft class, that's tough because Houston. Yeah, I've mentioned on here before. Could they have a good season? Maybe even sneak into the playoffs. I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibilities, but it's very unlikely. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, in Las Vegas right now, the odds have Arizona and Houston most likely to get the top two picks next year, or excuse me, the worst two records. And so now, guess what? If that happens, Arizona's picking 1 and 2 next year because
Oh wow.
they collected. Yeah, exactly. So going to be better quarterbacks in the next year's draft. So if Stroud stinks, you can't just call it quits right there. You've already gave away your pick. But even if he doesn't, my argument is: does Will Anderson help me evaluate C.J. Stroud? Does he make the offense better? No, he doesn't. I mean, maybe he helps them win another game here or there, but I just think long term, the move does not jive for me. Where picking Stroud was fine, GM buys himself some more time on the job, but it's just it's like taking a loan out and paying a premium interest rate when next year you could have probably got the same loan for a way better rate. That's kind of my feeling on it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense, Matt, but
Yeah,
that's
no, I
my
get it.
worst.
I'm actually genuinely surprised, Brian. That was in my running. I actually had them on my next. I had Will Anderson there, and not be like you said because of the player, but Houston. What are we doing? We gave up so much for this guy that's unproven. I mean, what could you've gotten for as a proven commodity for what you gave up for that haul? And like you said, I didn't even factor in the fact that it could be a 1 and 2 for Arizona next year. This honestly could set them up for the future as things unfold.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I respect the fact that Houston's wanting to go aggressive, but I don't love how they went about it. Not at all. I don't think they did great. And I remember being there on the screen. They had C.J. Stroud's face. They're like letting him know, like, hey, the Texans just traded back up. And he was like,
Mhm.
pure
Mhm.
shock, and I was too. And then to find out what they gave up for him, even more jaw dropping. I think you nailed it. I don't know. I don't know what the internet's going to think about it. I think a lot of people have been praising this, and I don't really know why.
It's a short-sighted vision to praise it fully. I mean, I think it's okay to give it a chance, but just again, I mean, this is not a team that's going to be in the Super Bowl next year under any circumstances. So I feel like, okay, take the quarterback. Let's evaluate him. Let's help him,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll figure out the rest next year. Even if they like Stroud, guess what? Say they're the third, fourth pick in the draft. Maybe they get Marvin Harrison Jr., who's being considered best wide receiver prospect in recent memory. So it's just stuff like that. Like I think you've got to be realistic. Houston was not. Arizona was. Arizona realizes that they're in for a long year and they're preparing for it. Okay, Matt, who is third? Okay, and for those fresh to this concept, this segment, this is kind of a maybe meets expectations or just below. I would say just below. You know, um, not terrible, but certainly not good or even really a solid pick.
Gotcha. So, like I said, I had Will Anderson lined up for this, but my backup for this, Brian, this also may be a little bit controversial. Uh, Bijan Robinson to Atlanta. I not to knock the player, great running back. I just don't know that it made sense for Atlanta to go grab a running back, especially this early. And I don't think that's going to be what sets this team up. This team's loaded with weapons, Brian, but they have Desmond Ritter at the helm, as far as I know, leading the way at this point. I mean, what do you do? I mean, like I heard someone else make an analogy, like they've got like a race car with a senior citizen driving, something along those lines. And I don't know. I don't love it. What do you think about it?
We could go further, perhaps on another day, but I kind of like it, and just hear me out. Arthur Smith,
Okay.
he comes from Tennessee, and Tennessee was good when Arthur Smith was there,
Uh
offensive
huh.
coordinator the year that they went to the AFC title game behind Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
What he has done the last couple years, he has built an offensive line that's going to run block as good as anybody except maybe the Eagles. Like it's up there. They drafted the guard at like pick 36 to kind of like solidify the whole group of five. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be able to run the ball, and you have two tight ends now. You have Pitts, and they traded for Jonnu Smith, former Titan. They have the receiver from last year, Drake London, who's going to be a play action piece. You know, they have more weapons around him. So yeah, you're counting on Ritter to be Ryan Tannehill or better. But with Robinson now, I'm not saying he's Derrick Henry, but I think he can have a huge impact on games. He's going to be a better receiver. You're going to be able to leave him out there on third down, even if it's a 3rd and 10. He can handle it. He can be a receiving option or a blocker. So without going too much deeper, I kind of think the Falcons might be right there at the top of that division for me right now. I really do. And it's not saying much. Very low bar to clear, but
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like it. I think it fits.
I think you make an interesting point there. I can't deny that. But I've made this point time and time again on this podcast. I just don't think you can get the job done without an elite quarterback or at least above average. And I don't know, maybe Ritter is that, but right now it's hard to say. And if you think back to all the elite running back led teams, I can't really recall too many that have made a good playoff run outside of, like you mentioned, the Tennessee Titans. And
Mhm.
I didn't realize it at the time. This appears to be straight up like a reboot of that. So I don't
Mhm.
know. Maybe it gets them to the NFC title game. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm a little too harsh on it, but I don't love it personally.
We'll see. He's got to stay healthy, which is the case for any player, especially running back. But I think if he does, he's going to be a top pick in fantasy football. Remember that those W2Fers who play fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Matt, my third place. Look, I got Sean Payton in the Denver Broncos drafting white cornerback Riley Moss at pick 83. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I don't say this lightly. I was a white cornerback in high school. Like, I don't want to just totally say that the kid doesn't have a chance. In fact, I was pretty impressed with his highlight reel. But to me, you know the ceiling is capped here. this guy is not going to be an elite player. It's just the scientific odds are stacked against him.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, it's like knowing the kind of defense they want to play. I don't know if it's necessarily the best fit that way either. It's just tough when you are a white boy trying to make it in the league. This is not the position. In fact, this is the last position you will see somebody like this excel. Kudos to him to getting this far, but I just think it's a wasted pick. At best, he's depth. He's a special teamer, but that's about all you're going to get out of Riley Moss. No offense, but yeah, it is kind of offensive.
He's gonna have a fence to it. That's for dang sure. I see your points, man. I see your point for sure. I will say this for what's his last name, Riley. Say
Moss.
Moss. Riley
Mm.
Moss. I did see a little promo he was given. Great head of hair on the kid. He's got that
Mm-hmm.
going for him.
He
So if
does.
nothing
He does.
else, maybe get a head
So
and shoulders deal.
I rolled that into my second pick real quick. So, this is one we obviously view in a positive light. I think it's a very good pick. And I don't want to, I don't want to say it. It's not a team I'm particularly fond of. I don't like seeing them succeed. But Buffalo Bills, at the end of the second round, they take Osiris Torrance, guard out of
Mm.
Florida, who was getting mocked sometimes at the end of the first round. And I know that doesn't mean everything, but I just look at their team. We talk all the time about Josh Allen last year getting hit too much pressure on Josh Allen to do everything. We know this is a fact. And it's easy, it's low hanging fruit to go, well, go get him another wide receiver. Sure. To me, where they really needed to make up ground was the O line, because when I think about like Kansas City, in the big games, Mahomes usually is protected well. You throw that Super Bowl a couple years aside with the injuries that piled up. But other than that, like I can't remember a game where Andy Reid didn't have that line playing well enough to make it at least a non-issue. Yet with Buffalo last year, the game against the Bengals, especially, it was like, man, they just didn't show up in the biggest moments. This kid here, he's a horse. He's a big old boy. Probably a little more of a run blocker than a pass blocker, but he'll be a cheap plug and play guy who, what I'm trying to say, I mean, helps Josh Allen have more protection and hopefully gets them over the hump in physical playoff games late in the year for their sake. And I don't want to see it, but
It's good points. Good points. Can't argue that. I mean, yeah, I like that pick a lot better personally. I know people are high on the Dalton Kincaid thing, but I don't know. I don't see him being this X factor game changer. I heard some comps to Kelsey, and that seems asinine if you ask me. So I like it better than that.
yeah, Kelsey. I mean, I like Kincaid and all that. He does have a back issue on his record, which is never a good thing at any point in your career, let alone before you start at the
Mm-hmm.
NFL. But he got picked where he should have gotten picked, in my
Mm.
view. It wasn't like, man, how'd this guy get to 25 or whatever? So, we'll see how it goes. Josh Allen, ultimately, he's going to prioritize Diggs. He's going to hit the deep shots to Gabe. We'll see how they end, because Dawson Knox is still there. Like I don't think they're going to have him on the bench a whole lot. So it'll be fascinating to see. Who'd you have in second place, man?
I'm really torn on this, Brian. I have like three guys tied in at second place. But I'm going to do this solely based on just my expectations for what this team was going to do draft wise, and them just actually doing something decent for once. Brian, I'm going to take the Patriots with Christian Gonzalez, man.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they always typically miss in the draft, and at least recently. And maybe they did that again here, but I'm like, wow, okay, actually solid pick. I know he kind of slid a little bit and kind of fell in their arms, but surprising. Hey, Pat, shout out getting a good corner.
They're one of these teams too that always maximizes the corners. Like they get the most out of these dudes. You think about J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore, all good players who were at their best in New England, and the way that Belichick just knows what to get. The Chiefs are kind of turning into that type of team too, where they can get a corner in the fourth round and he's playing really really well immediately. So give Belichick a guy like this who has all the physical talent in the world. Yeah, if you made me bet, you put the gun to my head right now, I'm going to say Gonzalez is probably going to be a Pro Bowl player within the next 4 years. And their defense is good already, so it's not like he's being hung out to dry.
Mhm.
They couldn't believe it, I'm sure, when he was available at 17, and probably the fastest card Belichick has ever turned in, to be quite honest.
Just immediately. Was that the one? I can't remember in the moment. Was that the one where they immediately put it in?
It honestly might have been. It was fast, and I thought the whole draft, especially night two, was going super fast compared to normal. But yeah, like it didn't take long, and it was pretty obvious when they got up. Like, oh yeah, they're gonna draft this kid. He can't go any further. But we'll see. And it's fun because I feel like New England needed that going into a season where their division looks really tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's going to put them over the hump anytime soon, but could set them up a little bit down the road.
All right, Matt. Number one, if there's ever going to be one that we match this week, I think this might be it, but we'll see. I don't know. What was the best pick of the 23 NFL draft as we sit here just a few days from its conclusion?
Man, this is going to be a wild card. I don't think we're going to match, Brian, because I went solely on value, value, value. I think I'm going to upset
Hmm.
the internet with this one, Brian. Number one, best draft pick. And I'm going to get your take on this, but
I
first,
know where this is going.
maybe you don't. I think you know where I'm going, but I'm going to switch it up on you. Hendon Hooker, Brian. I'm getting the Lions their worst and first, man. I mean, I think the
Yeah,
guy's going to upset. I know he's coming off the ACL, but he could be the guy that, is that final piece that the Lions lock in and put him over the top in a couple years. Maybe Jared Goff's that perfect bridge quarterback that can show him the ropes, a nice little play action pass. I don't know. Hooker's got a big arm, big talent, good value in the third round.
kind of reminds me of like, oh, what am I trying to say here? Whenever you have that, well, kind of Jalen Hurts, really. Like when Hurts got picked in the second round, it was a shock. Some fans for Philly hated it. Carson Wentz damn sure hated it. And at the time, you're like, where does he fit in here? Now we can see the path a little more clearly for Hendon because Goff is not, you know, he's always going to be viewed as replacement level. So yeah, it's one of those deals, and they have so many young playmakers. They got the receivers that are young, the tight end that's young. They just took the other night, the running back. So whoever's quarterback for these next few years, and their offensive line's really good. They're very insulated, and so if you told me Hooker was the starter in 2024, would not be shocked. Honestly, I'd probably bet on it right now. No disrespect to Goff, but I think pretty highly of Hooker, and I think he's going to take advantage of the situation. So, no, I thought you were going another way, and even though
Are you going that way?
I thought about going that way too, talking about Will Levis, but I'm not. He's not my number one. He's an honorable mention. Sounds like he's an honorable mention for both of us because even though I dug on him about the mayonnaise stuff, I just think he went to the perfect place. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that the Titans got him in round two makes it to where, like, if he's a bust, who cares? Like, they didn't
Yeah,
spend a top five pick on him. But I just see him working really well there. My number one,
exactly.
actually, go ahead,
Oh,
Matt.
sorry. I was going to say, and they got a heck of a value out of him with that spot. A lot cheaper, saved, what was it, 27, 24 mil, somewhere in that
Oh,
ballpark.
gosh. Yeah.
Um, and let's be real, a large part of success in this league is where you land, right?
Mm.
So good infrastructure, and they could build something really nice around him. So I like it. And I don't know. We'll get into. I got some more questions for you in regards to quarterbacks after your pick, but feel free to go ahead, my man.
Yeah. The quarterback discussion, it'll get deeper here shortly after my first place pick, which kind of leads us right into it because it is a quarterback. My number one, I was shocked by this. Shocked, maybe not the right word. I really wasn't expecting it, wasn't predicting it. Anthony Richardson to the Colts at 4. And I am in no way going to say that he's becoming an elite QB ever. In fact, I told folks who I was talking to this weekend, I really wish he was going somewhere where he could sit and that's not going to happen in Indy because their people's jobs are on the line.
Gardner
The
Minshew's there, Brian.
I know, but the owner coming out saying basically, I believe you got to play. Like he said that owner is a whack job, Ursay, but ultimately he calls the shots. And if he tells Shane Steichen put the kid in, that's what they're going to do. And that's kind of what I was hearing in his interview. But the reason I love it is because they swung for it. And in the AFC that we are in here in 2023, you either have an elite or you don't have a shot. Like, let's just put it this way. I think Richardson, he could be a top 5 NFL QB for 10 plus years, 8 plus years, or just god awful and wash out within 4 or 5 years. Those are
Mm-hmm.
probably the two outcomes. Like, I don't know that him being the 15th best QB in the league, I don't know that that's going to happen under any circumstances. But if you're Chris Ballard, the GM in Indy, why pedal, with your dick and try to get one of those guys? Let's go for it all. And if it
Mm-hmm.
don't work out, then I'm going to get fired because I was going to get fired anyway. But if it does work out, we're going to be competing. We're going to be right there with Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo, maybe even above them because I really think Ballard, they do a good job of picking players around the quarterback. He's just really had a hard time post Andrew Luck at that position. And I parlay that going forward into this next discussion about the QBs. The AFC South, they draft these 3 rookies, and it's fun as hell. It's going to be great. 6 games next year, possibly between those 3 guys, just going head to head. They could be good. Any one of them, you could consider them good franchise quarterbacks, and it still might not mean that they are better than the 8th, ninth, 10th best QB in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. That is insane, but it is true. And, anyways, Matt, speaking on Richardson, I just want to talk about that division. Like, do kind of a vibe test on that division because it's kind of crazy how that all unfolded with Stroud, Levis, and Richardson landing in the AFC South.
Yeah, no, it's pretty wild. I want to speak to the point where you said Richardson. He's kind of a boomer bust guy, right? He's either going to become an elite guy or we're just totally washed out. And like you said, I like that. I like that for a team because if you think about it, you said he's probably not going to be a 15th ranked quarterback, something like that. Well, speaking to your point, why would you want a guy like that, right? That almost handcuffs you. I feel like you're just good enough that we can't get rid of you, but you're not good enough to win it all. So here's the thing. Let's throw him out there. Maybe he's elite. He elevates your team into one of the top playoff contenders. Or you know what? He's gone. Doesn't work out. Let's try it again, right? I think that should be the mentality that most GMs should have instead of trying to play it safe and be mediocre. Because like we said in the last episode, you thought the Seattle Seahawks and Minnesota Vikings should have went for a quarterback, and I know they kind of did, but yeah, I mean, look where they're at. They're good teams, but I don't think they have what it takes to eventually get to the top of the mountain because of that.
That's it. If I was an NFL GM, and it's easy to say this right now, I'm clearly not. But if I was, I would want to tell my owner that I work for, hey, this is how I view it. I'm going to swing for the alpha superstar who is going to sell the crowd out every single week, going to sell more jerseys than you ever thought imaginable, make you more money, and raise the value of your franchise more than you ever imagined possible. And that's what's happened for some of these teams because you think about Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati, they were not prestigious, historic franchises before these quarterbacks got there. And you could say Cincinnati's still working their way up and even Buffalo to a degree. But think about Clark Hunt. Clark Hunt, the valuation of the Chiefs since Mahomes and his ascension is astronomical. And so what my pitch would be to the owner is I'm going to keep swinging for that guy. I might get it wrong. Odds are I probably will because it's just that hard. But eventually I'm going to get it right. And it's almost like a way to trick that um, owner into thinking like he's looking out for me. He's trying to do what's best for me, my pockets, because ultimately that's what the owners care about. And And so, like, I look at the Texans, I don't feel like CJ Stroud does that for you. I don't think there's any situation where he becomes top five,
Mm-hmm.
any outcome, right? He could even be
Mm-hmm.
a bust. Well, it's not like he's that safe either. And Levis, I would probably say similar. Like he's somewhere in the middle, but I don't know that I ever see him being what Richardson could be. Richardson could be that dude. He has like Cam Newton, Josh Allen physical ability. Some would say even more in terms of running the ball and a big arm. It's fun. And I've short sold the Jags a little too much this offseason. I'm kind of coming back to them. Like they should win the division. They really should.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think any of these teams, especially Indy, should be wrote off as just going to be awful. You know, I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that's the case. I think they could be very feisty, at least competitive, week in and week out.
No, 100%. I totally with you. I think Jacksonville's still the top dog in this division. Great weapons. Trevor Lawrence, he's been around for a few years now, and he's got some experience under his belt. As far as the other teams go, I like the fact they took a chance. So who knows? It's going to take some time. I feel like for Tennessee, um, like you said, Indy, Sky could be the
Mm-hmm.
limit for them. CJ Stroud was probably my least favorite quarterback amongst the five. But who knows, man? Maybe he pans out just fine. I like the fact they're trying. This division got a lot more interesting, I tell you that. So when it comes up on Thursday night, when we see this division about
Exactly.
4 times, it's going to at least be a little more exciting for us at home.
Right. I feel like one day there might be not there might be, there will be documentary series made about the AFC and the era that we're in. If two or three of these guys are good, like it's just crazy to me how every week you flip on CBS or wherever, AFC matchups are going to have heavy hitters at QB who can, you know, at least put on an entertaining product, which is more than you could probably say for about half of the NFC. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Matt, if you don't have any more to add on that, if you do, that's fine. I want to spend a little bit of time also talking about the AFC North. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Dovetails into the conversation, but I come out of the draft week feeling like Pittsburgh got a lot better. I thought their draft fell really well, and I think Baltimore got better too. And we know they handled the Lamar thing right. You say what you want, but they have
Mm-hmm.
security there. They know he's going to be there. If he has a lingering leg injury, he's probably going to play through it this year. I think that division is wide open. Besides Cleveland, I'm still not buying Cleveland. But the other three teams, I think those are going to be absolute piss brawls. Old fashioned AFC North, Vontaze Burfict blowing heads off. That type of stuff is going to be taking place. And I can't wait. It just, again, the AFC is going to be incredible.
Yeah, no. So speaking to the north, the Ravens are probably one of my favorite teams this as an offseason, right? I mean, I feel like the timing is a little weird for the Lamar contract. I mean, it feels like they essentially just gave him what he wanted, like just waited months to do so, kind of. But other than that, I mean, hey, at least you got your guy, right, for 5 years or so.
Mm.
I like the Zay Flowers pick, honestly. That was in contention for one of my favorite picks of the whole draft, right? Could be a top receiver down the road, and could elevate this team where they actually have some weapons now. So that is definitely scary. Cleveland, I still feel decent about them. I like Deshaun. I know he's got a lot to prove again, but and I know you're down on him, but I still think he could turn it around. Pittsburgh, good draft as well. The only thing I might change on their end is I might have taken a quarterback. Just it's time to rinse and repeat over there. Sorry, Bass Daddy at the Bass Daddy on Twitter. But yeah, and Cincinnati, of course, is still good. But that division, man, it's probably hairier than it's been, which is hard to say than the past few years or so. So, good call, Brian. Good call.
Okay, and we're kind of just doing vibe check right now. So like thoughts that we each have broadly. And I brought up those AFC divisions. Is there anything that you have on your end where you're just like, I got to get this out there in the open, um, that you feel really strongly about post draft?
Post draft here, yeah, Baltimore's on my short list there. Philly feel like they did well again. I mean, for whatever reason, they just keep drafting the Georgia defense, which, hey, not a bad play. Not a bad play, right? But
On the
so they're
nose.
doing well still. Minnesota, though, I feel like you made a point last show that they should make a move for a quarterback. And I mean, they did, right? They did draft one like the fourth or fifth round. The kid out of BYU, I believe.
Yeah,
But
waste of a pick.
yeah, I mean,
That ain't
what are we
going anywhere.
doing? I don't know what we're doing, right? They've got players all around, but like I mentioned before, they're kind of handcuffed with Kirk Cousins, and I don't know, man. I think they've kind of reached their ceiling in a lot of ways. I mean, maybe they'll make an NFC title game if everything goes perfectly, but don't love their draft personally. I got a good receiver, I guess.
Yeah, they did. They won't make an NFC title game. I can promise you that. But Jordan Addison, I think, very adequately replaces Thielen. He's kind of the same kind of dude. Like, gonna work really good out of the slot. Give somebody for Cousins to target that doesn't put all the pressure on Jefferson. But that's a franchise that's in flux a little bit, probably heading in the wrong direction in the grand picture. You mentioned Philly. Now I do think it's a little bit like I think they get their cock sucked a little too hard overall. It's yeah, the picks are good. They are, but let's just let's see. Are they going to be better than last year? Because they did lose a lot on the defensive line. They lost Hargrave, right? So you're replacing Hargrave. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think they're going to be great, and I'd pick them to make the Super Bowl. But I don't know that they're going to be better than they were last year. I just think they're kind of like making up ground that they had lost so far this offseason. So we'll see. And you've always got the
Mm-hmm.
question of the Super Bowl hangover. Will that be a
Yes.
thing for the losing team? Can be. So I worry about that. While we're on the NFC subject, I really liked what Arizona did because I felt like they were brutally honest with themselves. They didn't try to do more than they should. They collected that Houston first rounder. And now, Matt, if they have the shitty season that we expect, I think they're going to be in a spot where they can move on from Kyler Murray, which will be the best thing for that franchise as soon as they can fiscally handle it, which will
Mm-hmm.
be next off season with a post June 1st trade or release, whichever direction they go. And then they can get Caleb Williams or Drake May more adequate passers and more importantly, just seemingly better personalities. Although
Mm-hmm.
there's, the jury's out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we kind of called the seg a vibe check, like you said. Kyler does not. He's the epitome of not passing the vibe check. So yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense for them. The only thing that I could think Arizona could might do better is let's maybe ask for a little less for DeAndre Hopkins and just get rid of that contract. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to do you any good, right? So you might as well just get what you can get. Stop asking for too much and just have him on your roster that's not going anywhere. I don't know, just an idea.
That is true. I mean, if he's sticking around, the only, I guess, if they feel like Kyler's ahead of schedule and like maybe he's going to play earlier than expected, then maybe you can sell me on it. But then again, that's like if I just feel like they need to not tank, but understand like winning games next year at a high clip is probably not the best thing for the franchise. And football guys, they're not going to necessarily ever say that, but some of them know. They do.
Mm-hmm.
So we close this episode up now with our Dick of the Week segment. Possibly your favorite, whoever you are listening out there. It's my favorite, at least for now. And Matt, I want to know. I mean, if it's me, we'll just pass you. I don't want to hear it. But if it's somebody else, then by all means.
Brian, I'm not going to lie, you were on my short list, especially after last week's shenanigans and not seeing you at the draft this weekend. But you know what? I kind of gave it to you a little bit early.
Yeah, you did.
I got a couple options here, and you know what? I may end up voicing the second one at the end of the show. We'll see, Brian. I believe the clip. I actually saw the clip because of you, Brian. Dick of the week, Jalen Carter, right? I don't know if I should make him the Dick of the week. I don't know if I should make the reporter from NFL Network Dick of the week. I'm going to pop the clip up on here for the YouTube. For those of you that didn't see it, the reporter was like, given just a little synopsis for Jalen Carter, like Jalen Carter, excellent defensive player. It sounded like she was going to say, I don't know what she was going to say, big defensive player or something. Then she slipped out big dick. So, I mean, I wonder if she knows from experience or just, heard from the rumor mill. I don't know. But I feel like that either one, both of these people are in the running for the dick of the week. What do you say?
Yeah, I think she was just going to say big guy. And,
Freudian
Jalen,
slip.
he's got that checkered past a little bit. Not trying to get too dark here, but he's got character concerns. And would you put it past him to slip her a little meat pre-draft? We know they were both in the same. They were in the same city, so that's what I
I,
mean. You say the Eagles nailed this draft, but for all you know, he's just working on nailing ass.
if she does have, experience with that, that is the kind of on-field reporting that you just love to see. That kind of commitment. She deserves a raise.
She didn't. There was no hiccup either. Like she just kept going. She handled it well. As well as you can handle that.
She might not even realize she said it. She's just listing out attributes, and you know what? It come out. People seem to, respect it, and why not, right? Shout out Jalen Carter and her. I don't even know her name, to be honest with you, but
No, I had never saw her. I think maybe she just meant to say it, and that's why it came off so smooth. Like, can't roll anything out right now until we hear more from the young lady.
Yeah,
Solid pick, Matt. Much better than I thought you were going to do. I'll give you that. So my dick of the week, also staying on the draft topic because it only comes around once a year. You gotta play the hits. My dick of the week is those who grade drafts like with A, B, C, D, E immediately after, and you've seen them by now. And some might be saying who hear this, okay, you're putting your foot in your mouth a little bit because we've been evaluating the draft, but not like that. Like, I'm not sitting here telling you that this team had a B plus draft because the 8 guys they took or whatever. I think it's so dumb. And we have all these years of proof. I was actually listening to somebody talk about it this morning. The year Seattle had their draft that basically set them up for a Super Bowl run. And it had Russell Wilson in it, and it had Richard Sherman in it. And it's like they got like a C minus or something. You hear these stories, and it's such a useless exercise. It generates clicks. People look at it, and that's the whole point, I guess. But if you're taking it seriously, shame on you. That's why you should be listening to this show, because we're going to look at it like it should be done, which is, Matt, you know who usually has the best drafts? The franchises that are functional, that aren't being ran into the ground, that have good coaches, that don't have an owner who is in sexual misconduct or things like that. Those are the teams that have good drafts. It's got nothing to do with, oh, this guy got picked sooner than I thought he should have, and vice versa. So that's why I'm not trying to drown anyone while they're down, but that's why the Cleveland Browns have been the Browns forever, because they never get it right. They've had plenty of drafts where they had 2, 3 first-round picks, and it never works out. So forget the grades. If you are going to grade them, at least weigh that stuff out. Like, okay, I can trust that team, that coach, to take a player who maybe I don't necessarily love, but I just know like they're gonna figure it out more likely than not. So yeah, my dick of the week: draft graders. You're a moron if you're out there doing that, and you're abusing whatever power you have to put that stuff out there in the first place.
I think that's fair, and I think a point of that is the draft. What it is for teams that have not been doing well in the past year or multiple years, they're selling optimism, right? You're buying in on hope that you found your guy, like for the Carolina Panthers, for instance, Bryce Young. Like, he can lead us to the division, can lead us to the title, et cetera, et cetera. That's what these people are cashing in on, right? They're exploiting these folks' optimism and scamming them, like you said, for clicks and stuff like that. So yeah, there's no way to really grade a draft until 2-3 years down the road, right? Until we see how these players develop. It's basically a glorified gamble. And so, yeah, I think you make an excellent point there, Brian. They're definitely Who are you, guy, that knows good draft? I mean, if you and I want to talk about it, maybe talk about a future bust, I'll lay a gamble out. I'll put some chips out there on C.J. Stroud, but we don't know what we're talking about, really. I mean, we do, we don't. You know what I mean?
It's just it simplifies the process in a way that is downright disrespectful. To just say this group of 7 formerly college players now going to the NFL, somehow they are worth a B minus, even though I've never seen them even in the jersey yet, let alone play a meaningful game. And it doesn't consider all the factors. Like, we spent all that time talking about the quarterbacks. Let's be honest. Look at history of the league. Yeah, the best quarterbacks, they have talent, they have intangibles, but if you don't go to the right place, it will not matter. And you'll flame out, you'll fall on your dick, and it'll be over. And that's not the kid's fault. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I gave Anthony Richardson positive that pick. I like that pick. I also acknowledge that I don't think Indy's the best place for him to succeed. I don't. I wish he would have went to Seattle. I think Seattle set him for a year, let him. Imagine this, man. I mean, you draft him, okay. They also drafted the receiver, Jackson Smith and the Jigba later in the round. Imagine next year, after learning the offense, knowing it inside and out, he steps on the field. Now he's focused on defenses, what NFL's teams do with blitz packages and so on. And out there, he has the comfort of Metcalf, Smith-Njigba, and Tyler Lockett, and a good offensive line. Can't beat that. So that's the stuff that matters. And if you're not accounting for that in your grades, which is kind of hard to, without becoming redundant, you're probably doing it wrong.
Great point. Yeah, that would have been a nasty play if they'd have done that. I would have liked to have seen that. That would have shaken up that NFC West totally. Very interesting. Yeah, no, excellent choice, I feel like, this week.
All right, that will do it for the draft recap.
Brian.
Oh.
Wait. We're getting a special bonus dick of the week. And guess what? Much to my surprise and to your surprise, not you. It's not you. This is a two-pronged one, Brian. It's a choose-your-own-adventure of who you think the dick of the week is, Brian. I'm going to cover right now the Travis Kelce saga, right? You've seen it on the internet. We've all seen it on the internet. The spiking of the Lombardi at the Kelce Jam. So, depending on which side of the coin you land, either you think Travis Kelce is a total dick for disrespecting the sport of football, the Lombardi trophy, and plus you thought it was the real trophy, or you're going to say the dick of the week are these people that have been been in such an uproar and an outrage because they think he spiked the real Lombardi. I don't know where you land on this. I personally land on those folks because, I mean, what are you doing? You're an outrage culture. You're just getting butthurt about nothing. Obviously, it wasn't the real Lombardi. But, bold move on Travis's part. He got people talking. And now I don't want to say it's a heel turn for him, but probably for the Chiefs, totally. If people didn't hate them enough already, they're no doubt the villain of the NFL. So that's it's official. Solidifies it. Super Bowl champion, has the draft. Kelce's all over the place. People, if you have too much success at one time, people start to turn on you. And that's exactly what's happening. So, yeah, a little choose your own adventure. 1B choice for Dick of the Week.
And to be honest, I'm okay with it. I get it. If the Bengals right now were what the Chiefs are in terms of success on the field, I would hate the Bengals. I already do. So what would it help if they had been winning Super Bowls or the Bills, whatever? I get it. I do, even though I think you cross a line when it's like, oh, Patrick's and Mahomes are D-bags and I don't know, just kind of getting personal with it. Separate the fact that you don't like seeing their team succeed from just hating them for what they are, because both of those guys are as charitable as it gets in the league. And yeah, they got personalities, Kelce especially, but that's the kind of shit. You don't have to pay attention to that. You got to watch him score touchdowns on your favorite team, but you don't have to expose yourself to things like what he did on that stage this past weekend which was just cool as hell. And Andy Reid himself confirmed today it was a fake Lombardi. We all knew it, and it is what it is. He's earned that right. He's earned the right to party. So,
I was about to say, I was like, you just opened up the door for a great slam dunk right there.
all right, that's it, W2Fers. We thank you for following along. Make sure, if you haven't already, please subscribe on Apple or Spotify so you continue to hear our stuff whenever it drops. And we will have more in the short term future and the long term. NFL offseason, it's unlike anything else. It's a beast. And now we get all this time, these months ahead to figure out, okay, this is what we really think about these teams and their direction. Cannot wait. Until then, adios.
Peace.